The creative process, it's something that's a mystery, right? No one's really got their finger on how do you make a hit record, how you become creative, right? But you have to be able to express yourself freely without thinking, oh, well, this is going to sound stupid. You have to be able to make mistakes, basically. And people don't want to do that, because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm tired. Force myself to, dust off the guitar. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Every time I've done yoga, I'm glad I did it. I didn't always want to do it, but I'm glad I did it. You just give a little bit of attention to someone, and you can create such a strong bond. You can stop and breathe and just look around, and like, taxes don't matter when you're in the mountains.
All you need, show up, living, pay attention, your participate, favorite, la 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 life, la 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 life. Namaste, welcome to Your Favorite Life. I'm Jeffosaurus Rex, and my goal is to bring you conversations of growth, adventure, and creativity. Hopefully we can shine some light on your path to your favorite life. Today's guest, a close friend of mine, Dan Shipley. Dan is a musician who enjoys writing acoustic music as well as heavy metal music on the guitar. He rides a motorcycle, has jumped out of an airplane, and he owns his own renovations company in the Simcoe region called Georgian Triangle Renovations. He's a great conversationalist, never afraid to play devil's advocate, and he has this unique ability to approach ideas in new ways and create new perspectives. It was a pleasure having an intimate conversation about life, exploring the creative process, the art of listening, and the present moment. Enjoy the conversation. Yeah, 2022 is like letting go of perfection.
That's your goal?
One of the things, because I know perfection stops me from
Getting started, because you're going to fail. Everyone fails.
Yeah.
It's part of the journey, right? Didn't Michael Jordan miss more shots or free throws? I don't know. I don't watch basketball.
Yeah, there's a good Gretzky quote. But yeah, it's just like, it's not just like getting started. It's just like wasting too much time on tiny details. And like, eventually I get it done. Like, I'm good at getting things done.
Yeah.
It's just like 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, wow, why did I spend so much time on like that little thing,
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to think that 10 years from now while I'm doing it in the present moment. But I'm like, and then you try and like, okay, like just pull the trigger. Like, and some things, you want to take time to do, but like when it's like, I'm spending too much time on this little thing. Yeah.
All right. So what's your first question? I want to hear it. I want to see the research you've done. You have notes there. I like it.
Yeah, well, welcome to the Your Favorite Life podcast. This is the inaugural. I did a test episode with my dad, so I have a wonderful guest with me today, Mr. Dan Shipley.
It's an honor to be on the first podcast.
Yeah.
Cheers.
I like how you said, take a sip of your beer, relax, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're going to be thinking, the more you do it, you're not going to think about the camera or the mic levels. Or maybe as you go on, you get a guy that does that stuff for you, right? And
yeah, it'll be my dad.
Yeah, and then you don't have to think about it, right? But you have to. Like, you don't want to do a whole podcast and you're like, oh, I didn't hit record.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I think I watched like London Real was on Joe Rogan's podcast. It was like episode like 40 or something. Like,
was he? Yeah.
Right at the beginning. And if you go back and look at like the YouTube video, like it looks like he doesn't even have lights on like for the
really?
video. I mean, there's like some colors, but I'm like, podcasting, I guess, was new at that time. And,
right.
But he was doing it. And I remember hearing a quote a long time ago. It was like, I may not be the most qualified, but I'm the one who's doing it. And by doing it, you start catching up to the qualified.
That makes 100% sense, right? Yeah, obviously with what I do for like renos, there's some guys that just started. There's other guys that have done it for 20 years, right? You're probably never going to be the best and you'll never be the worst, but you're out there doing it, and unfortunately customers don't know the difference, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you get someone to understand where you're at and like tell them what you're worth, right? I guess you're gonna have the same issue with the podcast. How do you get to people to listen and say, hey, listen, I have some good content here that you're gonna want to like listen to, because they're gonna be like, oh, I can just listen to Joe Rogan's podcast.
Right.
So I should ask you, what do you have that Joe Rogan doesn't?
Oh, you're a great guest to have on the show.
Oh shit, I put him on the spot.
Actually, I thought about that because even when I did like Mo Mondays, there's endless content online, and like Joe Rogan and Brian Rose from Leonard Really interviews the most influential people all over the world. And I noticed this with like even Instagram posting things. Like sometimes I was like, like, do I need to share about my life? There's maybe a few things. Like one thing is, yeah, you can learn a lot from like those influential people who are very, they're working hard in life and inspiring a lot of people. However, because you've never actually met them, like, of course they can still inspire you, but the people that have met me and made memories with us, are going to listen to this type of podcast, and they're going to relate to it because they're like, wow, like I jumped off that bridge in Angus with Dan and he did a backflip, and then
True story.
And then we went to Wasaga and like played guitar on the beach, and and I think that's what is neat about there being so much opportunity for creativity nowadays, is like everyone's got a podcast and every famous person has a podcast. It's great.
Yeah.
And like, if you're just a little bit, not as grand as these people in that sense, doesn't stop you from putting out content and inspiring like just your community. Because it's funny when you think about it, it's like, you've got like Leonardo DiCaprio, like working on the environment, and like he's got lots of money and lots of influential power, but it's like, we live in Barrie, like this is our community, like
Right.
I got to help out my fellow Barrie-tonians, right? And
That's
like,
a good point.
we grow up, we go to the same rec centers, and so like I'm like, I know where you've been, because we're not famous movie stars, but like we live in this community, and we have to inspire each other for where we're at, like you said, back to the work thing.
So that's what you want your reach to be. You want your reach to be local, like kind of like, so we're from Barrie, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
I just laughed.
We'll see what happens.
I just laughed because that was a good question. It's like a good coaching question. It's, like, of course, I love learning more about my community, and, you'll never know who you're going to reach in the world. You could reach anybody. And so like I'll ask you a question. One of my favorite bands, they're called Strange Vacation, and they're from like Michigan, and, you go on YouTube, you type in like Strange Vacation, like live show, and like there's like no videos. There's maybe like one, but like they're at the top of my iTunes, and they've like released like solid records, like professional records. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite bands. And like, I like messaged them and I was like, hey, like, do you have an album I could buy? And he like actually responded. And I was like, he's like, no, but maybe soon, like, keep listening. And
so you're going to get those guys on your podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice. So let me ask you that question. Like, is there anyone influential, whether it's music, who's influential for you that's not a star, like that is kind of like underground maybe?
Influencing me to do what though? Like motivating me to get stuff done?
Inspiring you. Yeah. Let's just keep it simple. Like a musician that you listen to that like is kind of unknown, but they're like, make you feel good. And
no,
okay.
not with musicians, not around here.
You're like, you're the opposite. You're like, they have to be like, because you're like a pretty talented musician.
Dude, I've tried for 15, 20 years to try to find musicians. And people, they're lazy. They're not creative. They're not in touch with, I don't know, the creative process. It's something that's a mystery, right? No one's really got their finger on how do you make a hit record, how you become creative, right? But you have to be able to express yourself freely without thinking, oh, well, this is going to sound stupid. Or you have to be able to make mistakes, basically. And people don't want to do that. I mean, like I've said this before, but like 20 years ago, you go to the music store and there would be a big wall, a bass player looking for band, a singer looking for band. Like in Barrie, I think there's one music store now, and there's no board. There's no community board. Like I've had ads everywhere. No one wants to play. And I wonder if that's an effect of our culture as a whole. If people are just not playing music as much, maybe they're not feeling as much. Sometimes I think, yeah, our whole culture is more, I don't want to say depressed, but you go to work. I mean,
Reserved,
even now in a pandemic, right? You go to work if you can work because of the pandemic, and then you come home and you can't go to the gym because the government says you're not allowed. So you're not really inspired to like, yeah, let's make rock and roll music, you know?
Yeah.
You're just like, fuck it, I'll watch Netflix, because now we have the ability to do that, to watch endless Netflix, and then go to sleep and do it all over again tomorrow. So it could be just the times we're in. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, but it's what inspires me is seeing people do things like this where you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
Like Jeff, you did Mo Mondays for, I don't know, people don't know because it's the first podcast, but you're already diving into what drives people. You're interested in people's stories, and Mo Mondays was awesome because people had these great stories that even I was skeptical at first. I'm like, well, what are these local people going to say that's so interesting? Because like you're watching the Joe Rogan podcast.
Right.
He's got a doctor on there. There's brand new research on vitamin D. There's, COVID research. But it was awesome. Mo Mondays was awesome. People had really touching stories. Some of them were like really funny. Some of them were like pulled on your heartstrings. And that's just life. People have stories to tell. And I think you'll do an awesome job finding those people in a situation like this, right?
Yeah, it's happening at this exact moment.
Yeah, I am awesome. No, it's true though.
Yeah,
you're gonna find a lot of cool people.
Thank you, and I think I want to touch on so many of those points. Like, first you said, you're trying to find people who are creative and not afraid to fail. And I went paddling on the Nottawasaga River this summer with someone who's very familiar with the river and paddleboarding. And she said, when I teach people about paddleboarding, the first thing I try and get them to do is to fall off their board, fall into the water. Because once you've fallen, then it's over. You know how to get back on your board.
Right.
And I loved when she said that. So
that's a good point. Because what if you're afraid of, what if I can't get back on my board?
Right.
But
and you have that in your head, right?
It's just another fear. Now you're afraid of falling off, and you're afraid of getting back on and losing your board.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then you touched on, are people not as expressive now or motivated? And yeah, it's like a direct reflection of like the society we live in, of what was I going to say about creativity and making mistakes, finding people. Kind of forget now, but I gotta have my notes and paper.
Yeah, where are your notes at?
You were saying it's hard to find people who want to express themselves, and I think like, maybe we're becoming. I remember what I was gonna say now. Being a little bit more reserved nowadays, at least this part of the world, with all this technology. I went and visited a friend of mine in the summer, and her grandparents are so cool. She's like 75 years old. She's out gardening, she can cook pies and everything. She's active. She's doing all, she's got a whole bookcase. She reads, and she plays piano and she plays instruments. So she's got this like piano set up. She comes in the room and like I jam with her on the piano and we do a sing song. And it's just like a nice present moment where you're filling you with so much joy. And it occurred to me in that moment that like, I wish that rooms were filled with more instruments than TVs. And maybe in the past they were, but like, that's the thing. It's like, there are less people probably nowadays who are picking up an instrument, whereas in the past, more people were inclined and motivated and to play music and weren't as afraid and like,
right.
And this is just this part of the world, but from that moment, like, I wish we spent more time sitting in a room with someone playing the piano than like watching Netflix together
And of course, it's great to watch a great movie or documentary, treat yourself, and stay balanced.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish there were more pianos and musical moments. Like how
Yeah.
many people, like you said, how many people do you know play the violin? And that's like a harder instrument to learn, right? Nobody.
Yeah.
It's or the saxophone. Like
Yeah.
when I was in Beale Street in Memphis, like every bar had a saxophone player. And this is
Yeah.
like a Toronto type like blues place, but still it's like saxophone, like, or even drums. Like you're a musician yourself, you're a credible guitar player, you put in the time to be creative, to make mistakes, you play the drums. Like once you learn one instrument
Yeah.
fully or a lot, you can now experiment and learn another instrument easier.
That's sort of like an economy thing too. Like if you're in a place where rent is $1,000 a month for a room, what are you gonna? And you're making like minimum wage. You can't even barely pay rent as it is. And you want to play drums, and it costs $1,000 to rent a room. Then people are like, well, fuck it. My options are limited to watching Netflix. And the funny thing with Netflix is you get that dopamine release when you watch a show, and you get that same release when you play a way greater release when you play music. But then you get also an intrinsic reward that you don't get with Netflix when you play music, because it's like, oh, I couldn't play that before. Like this is something that I'm making. You get,
Yeah, that's deep.
right?
Yeah.
It's like you get two different rewards, whereas Netflix, you just get like a bit of entertainment, and you get happy or sad depending on what the show is, or you laugh a bit if it's Family Guy. But like, yeah, when you're playing music, you get the social aspect too. Like when I was in a band, you get to hang out with like your 4 buddies twice or 3 times a week. If you're rehearsing, you're playing your
Like
instrument.
a brotherhood, yeah.
Yeah, it's a brotherhood. You get to shoot the shit. Like it's like social bonding that you don't get at work unless you have a good job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm doing renos, I'm
Or you're
looking
a
at
fun
a wall
person
all day.
Like it doesn't matter if you're doing a crappy job. If you're a fun person, you're the type of person who knows how to make people laugh and like bring that to a mundane job.
Yeah.
I was gonna say also, like, if you want to be a drummer, you can't just like be a drummer. I mean, maybe you can in an apartment building and
Right.
like set up your drums. Like, I mean, I'm sure you can do that, but
Even
like,
if you have electric drums and and that sound of tick, 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 like all the time, someone's going to complain. Like
Yeah.
you're going to feel bad.
you spoke about the brotherhood and community and like these intrinsic feelings of accomplishment and like something that's creative that you created.
Yeah.
And often, like, and there's 2 sides to the story. One side is like you watch a movie, you spend 3 hours or an hour and a half watching a movie, and then after it's over, you're like, oh yeah, that was a funny movie. I got my good laughs. Or you're like, oh, that was
Yeah.
a really sad movie or a scary movie. Ooh, I got like scared during the movie. And then you get off the couch and, maybe you go for a walk or you go on without your day. But like nothing is really like carried with you.
Right.
Depending on the movie. If it's like a movie that makes you think and like, or an
Yeah.
inspiring
Or a scary movie. And then you turn the lights off and you got to go upstairs.
go to bed.
And you're like, what was that behind me?
Yeah. It's like, why do I want that in my life?
Yeah.
Why do we want to be spooked? And, but I think that's like, I remember a friend of mine was Giselle. She would be like, you don't always have to like, after a movie, like have to like be moved or like, have to talk about it. It's good to just relax and chill and like, especially if it's a funny movie, maybe watch a funny movie. And during that movie, you got these laughs out. It is like therapeutic. But for me, I'm always like, sometimes even after a book, like you read a book and I like to try and learn a little bit more about it. Like watch interview with the author who talks about the book or if you watch a movie, listen to the actors or the writers about the movie and the behind the scenes. And sometimes I think like, yeah, if you don't balance that and you watch too many movies and don't, it doesn't make you think or feel a certain good way. Whereas like creating music or things like that.
Or it's just a habit. When you go to bed, you throw something on. It's almost like the Instagram thing we were just talking about. You're just mindlessly consuming garbage.
Yeah.
Your mental diet is just junk food, right?
This world isn't as interesting as this. So it's like, I'm sitting here waiting at the bus stop. It's like, well, I haven't checked my phone in a few hours. Like I should probably go on Instagram, right? And
yeah. Dude, anytime I've done yoga, even played hockey or especially written music, anytime I've done that, I feel good after. I'm like, wow, I achieved something that, like, especially when you're creative, it's like you do something that didn't exist before. There's a sense of, I don't know, I wish we could measure it somehow. Because like when you're done watching and looking at Instagram or watching a show, you don't feel that gratification. Like, this is the kind of line we're thinking along, right? I just hope someone can measure it at some point. So, because like when science comes out and says, hey, science shows that you release oxytocin, dopamine, blah, 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 serotonin, whatever it is, right? Then people are more like, okay, now I'm going to do it. You know, they have justification. Oh, now I need to like go out in the morning and get vitamin D because it helps me with my day or whatever, because science says it's okay, right? But just because science hasn't said it yet doesn't mean it's not good for you, right? Like, we all know when you go outside in the morning when it's sunny, for me at least, my day's different. Sometimes 2 or 3 days after I feel better.
It's almost like, I talked about this yesterday. It's funny. It's like when you eat something, your body just digests it for you. You don't have to sit there and be like, okay, let's move those intestines. You know? And like, but like, imagine like every day you woke up, and like some people think this is a video game that we're living. Maybe it is a simulation. It's like, imagine every day you woke up that you could just like touch your temple and this kind of like drop down would come in front of you. And it's like, these are your vitamin D levels. And like, this is like, you know, your fresh air levels are starting to drop. And,
right,
you know, like, and then that would make people, and then also like, you know, then you'd go and like hang out with your friends, and then you like kind of like the watch you were talking about, like measures your cardio. It's like you go out with your friends, and now you're like oxytocin is like this like way nicer color, right? And it's like you're like, oh, nice, like keeping on my stats. Whereas like, because we don't have that, we only have that as a feeling base and like a self-awareness base, where like, you know,
dude, it's like the frog in the boiling water. Like, have you heard about that, right?
I don't.
You put a frog in a pot of water, and you slowly increase the temperature, and it doesn't notice the change in temperature because it's so small. And then all of a sudden, when it's boiling, it eventually dies because it doesn't really realize the small change in temperature. It's the same thing, I think, with humans. When you feel like one day you feel kind of crappy, and it's not a big deal, and then you feel more crappy, it becomes the new normal.
Yeah.
And then every day, it's like, dude, I've told you this before with like back aches or neck aches from work because I do renos. I was thinking the other day, like, it's my normal. Like, my girlfriend asked me, "Oh, how are you feeling today?" Because I had a headache the day before, and I'm trying to answer it that like, oh, I feel good, but I said I feel okay, but my okay was back pain, neck pain, tired. You know what I mean? Like heel pain. That was my normal, but I told her like, oh, I feel good. And that's, I think, how a lot of people are living. It's just, you just keep going on day to day because you're not fulfilled, or you don't have the right nutrition. Like back in the day, I feel like we weren't working 40, 50 hours a week. So how fast are we burning through this vitamin D, vitamin C, whatever, right? And some people say you don't need any supplements, but it's like, you take us and like caveman, we have to like worry about taxes, getting hit by a car every day on the way to and from work. We got to think, okay, where am I going to get? Oh shit, I got to pay $30 for lunch. It's a lot more. There's another like stress. Oh shit, my boss is pissed off. I might lose my job. Like I got to think of how to do all this stuff for tomorrow. Like, I start work tomorrow. I'm thinking of like 3 different job sites we have. I'm like, and I'm not resting on the weekend. I'm just preparing and doing work and there was a leak at my house today, right? Our brains are like so overridden. We probably just burn through those vitamins, right?
Oh yeah, all the
so
time. Yeah,
I love when people are like, "Oh, you just need to have like a good diet, and then you don't need any vitamins." It's like, yeah, but we're living unnaturally.
Yeah,
we have lights on. We're staying up way longer than we should.
Like pretty bright right now.
They're pretty bright, right? You
know, it's like, yeah, you don't really know how that's affecting you unless you, like I said, you had that screen,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. And that would, I mean, I've been saying I want to go for like blood tests or like start doing something like that to try to monitor my health, right? And if anyone knows of a good company that does that, you can DM me at Donovan Woodcraft. But
Donovan Woodcraft, yeah,
that's the old company name. It's GTR now, but
okay,
yeah,
GTR, okay.
Georgian Triangle Renovations in the Barrie and surrounding area. But yeah, I've been wanting to do blood tests for a while, just to keep an eye on like, do you know what vitamins you go through quicker than others? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, with monocropping, people say that, oh, magnesium has dropped a lot in vegetables, and certain vitamins and minerals are not what they used to be in the 50s, right? But we don't know that. I just wake up one day and I'm like, I feel like I haven't slept, or like I have backaches and I'm like, I'm cranky or whatever. We don't know why. I mean, side note, I know I'm kind of rambling here.
Go ahead.
But
I got time.
someone that I dated, her dad was on blood thinners. And one day his heart just stopped. I guess he was drinking now and then. And so he went to the hospital. The paramedics revived him, and then he flatlined again. And then again, at the hospital, they revived him. I guess long story short is that it was a potassium deficiency. So,
Yeah, like how's he supposed to know that? Yeah.
but how do you know, right? Like they say you're not supposed to drink when you're on blood thinners because your body, to get the alcohol out, flushes out things like electrolytes with the alcohol. But like if you had a regular sort of inventory of what you have in your blood, that shit wouldn't happen. No, that's all it was. Just potassium, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's crazy to think how many of us are like not at that level where our heart's going to stop, but we're kind of living in that lower energy, or
Yeah.
we're not living optimally, right?
Yeah.
Even socially, like hanging out with you today, I'm like, dude, we haven't hung out in friggin' like 2 months, and it's a
Yeah.
good feeling, right? I've just been working and, fixing the
Yeah.
house, and you don't realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm really low in socializing. Like if that were a vitamin.
It is. Yeah, it's nice that you touched on that. And yeah, we need to go give some blood, and because I need to figure out what my blood type is. I know my mom kind of told me, but I'm like not sure if she's 100% sure. So yeah, they're like, oh, well, I asked my doctor, like, oh, we don't know what your blood type is. I'm like, aren't you my doctor? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I should know. Like,
Yeah.
but she said, oh, well, you can go give blood. That's the easiest way. So
Right.
kind of like, let's go give.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get some good information too,
Yeah. I got the card in my pocket. I think I'm A.
Yeah.
Blood type A. Yeah.
The reason I mentioned that with like the type is because I was interested in like the blood type diets and like
Right.
just like learning a little bit more about that if I resonated with. I don't know much about it, but it would be interesting to note like how your people's bodies feel after eating certain foods, and like if you have I'm just brainstorming here, but if you had like
Yeah.
ancestors who like lived in the north and like they consumed a lot of fish and maybe meats because they live in the north, and maybe your body is a lot more sensitive to other types of food.
Right.
And whereas if you're from the south, you eat more grains or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to go give blood. And
That could be such a deep rabbit hole. Like, what if your ancestors had like 50% carbs and then like 40% fats and 10% protein or something, and that's what's good for your blood type or your ancestry, right? Like, we think of it just in terms of maybe what type of food to eat. Oh, like if I'm Irish descent, oh, we ate a lot of potatoes. But maybe it's like the percentage of, fat, carbohydrates,
yeah,
protein, like, but who knows? We won't know, but maybe in 100 years, they'll be like, know exactly what's good for your blood type.
right. It's like not the actual foods you're saying. It's like what's in the foods. Like
Yeah.
the actual vitamins and.
Yeah. Or the
Gotcha.
amounts.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to my girlfriend the other day and I was saying like, some people put on weight and they'll put it all in the wrong places to make them look less attractive kind of thing. But some people will like eat and, they'll bulk up with muscle and they look more vibrant and healthier, right? Everyone's body is so different. Like,
Yeah. It's interesting where like our fat is stored. Yeah.
right? Or I was watching Penn and Teller, Penn and Teller,
No.
the magicians.
Okay.
Anyways, this one guy, Penn, he's a really tall guy and he was overweight. I think he lost like 100 pounds, but he just ate potatoes for like 3 or 4 months, whatever it was. And then people think, oh, if you have carbs, you're going to gain fat. So
Right.
they're like, if you want to lose weight, you have to go protein and fats. But he just ate carbs and he lost. So like, maybe it'll work with his body, maybe it won't work with someone else. But how do we know? I mean, how similar are we as humans, and how much of it is our ancestry, like you said, or blood type or body type,
Yeah, maybe we're just overthinking it, and like as long as you're eating a variety of like different colors and like leveled balance of like different vitamins, getting exercise,
Maybe.
fresh air, and you know, you're like, I haven't eaten beets in like a month. I should probably eat some beets. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
But what if someone's like 230 and jacked and another person's 130 pounds? Maybe they go through nutrition at different rates too. Maybe that 230-pound person will just burn through I don't know, vitamin C or whatever.
yeah.
But we don't know. Like, there's so much we don't know. We just need that research to kind of happen.
Yeah, and I guess that's like part of the journey as like, you know, you're going to have moments during your life where you do lose energy and you have to adapt and check in on yourself like with doctors and things like that and get blood tests like as your life changes, and like that's part of learning and becoming a more well-rounded human. And it's funny, like I was with a friend the other day and we were hanging out and this person with a walker walked by us and she said, "That's going to be us someday." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny you think that." Because I'm like, I think when I see someone with a walker, I'm like, that's going to be like my parents someday. I mean, my dad does use a walker, but like,
Right.
you know, whereas I don't think about it as myself. I think about it like, oh, I'm going to miss my parents. Right.
Yeah.
But I know like you actually wrote some really beautiful answers actually on here. And you kind of mentioned something about losing health as like maybe something that was a bit of a fear. However, I feel like you're going to be the guy when you're like 90 who's doing like handstands and like inverted cold water therapy. And like, why don't you comment on that?
I don't know. Everything has a cost, right? And what I'm doing for work now has a cost. And everything has a cost. Even if you do nothing and you just sit there,
Yeah.
that's a cost to your health, because they say like sitting's the new smoking, right?
You inspire me about that. I got a stand up desk now.
Yeah, it's all about balance, right? And a lot of people don't realize that, how important movement is for the body. There's a lot of resources out there, and I'm not one of them, but just getting that movement in is so important. What was your question? I totally lost the train of thought.
The question was, I think, it's right here. It says, I said, "What are you afraid of?" I like asking people
losing
that,
health.
or what do you find challenging, and how do you plan on overcoming or navigating those? And you said losing your health.
Right.
And like, I thought maybe you could comment on what you were thinking regarding that.
Most jobs these days are 40 to 50 hours a week. You know, it's a 40-hour work week. You add travel, you add all the shit. That doesn't leave a whole lot of time for your health. So I've been to physiotherapists and massage therapists, right? And they give me the exercises if my back hurts. Oh, like go home and stretch for half an hour. Like dude, I'm working for 8 to 10 hours a day with hammers and drills. And I'm like, I'm not a big guy either, right? Like I have small wrists. If I didn't work out and eat a shitload, I'd probably be 150 pounds.
Yeah. Okay.
But like maybe I'm like 180 now. And I think that's harder on your joints. Whereas like if you get an elephant to carry 100 pounds, it's not a big deal for him. But
Yeah.
a 150 pound guy, if he's carrying the same weight, it's harder on his body.
Yeah.
So you can't keep up with your health doing what this culture demands of you. Even like I said, going an hour to work, if you commute to Toronto and then back, 2 hours a day of just sitting, you're not getting good air. You're just not moving, compressing your hip joint into your femur. I don't think we can really keep up with what the world demands of us right now. So, I mean, until people we try our best, right? I try to do yoga a couple times a week, go to Jujutsu, but
Yeah, you don't even have kids too. I mean, you got a girlfriend, but like, which you could like be active with your girlfriend in
Exactly.
many different ways. But you also like don't even have kids. So think about
Yeah.
the people who have kids. They're like working a full-time job. Then they got to like spend time with their family. It's like,
that's your
then
priorities,
it's 9:30.
right?
They're like, oh, I got to do my physio stretches. My physio told me
Right.
to do this one time.
Yeah. And then your diet completely goes to shit. Because if you want to make something good in the morning, you want to get your protein, your carbs, your fats, you want to get like some fiber in there, some like lettuce, tomato, whatever. That's going to take you half an hour minimum to prepare. And then you got to eat it, and then you got to do the dishes. That's an hour. Like if you want to do a good job, And then lunch happens, and what most people get half an hour for lunch, right?
Yeah.
So when are you going to prepare that?
Takes you half hour, and then you got to eat it on the job. You got to eat it while you're on the dragon boat during the race.
Right? Or you eat your leftovers. Some people say, well, just don't make excuses, make it happen, right? Okay. So you're at home. So you get home at like 6, 7 o'clock from work, and then it takes you an hour to make your dinner. And then you got to clean up. You got to put
You're
all your
driving.
stuff in Ziploc.
You're putting on your jujutsu,
Right?
and like
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you want to do cardio too. Okay. So then you're trying to get that in, but you want to have a relationship. You got to spend time with your girlfriend, get her flowers and stuff. It's just so overwhelming to have balance, I believe.
For sure. Yeah. Like you can only get up so early, like, and only sacrifice so much sleep. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you put on top of that, if your back hurts, like I hurt my back at work, well, what are you going to do? You just keep working. And then when you come home from work, you're like tired. So
Yeah.
I don't want to work out because my back hurts. I need to rest. So I'll watch Netflix. And you just get in that routine of watching TV and going to work. And then you don't see your friends for 2 months. And you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck just happened? Then the government says you can't go to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then you're pissed off and you're holding stress in you. So your back hurts more.
Yeah, actually.
Enough with that stuff. And we're going to take a break.
Yeah. You got to take a pee? Get that bladder checked out. I want to touch on, and we're back.
And we're back.
I wanted to touch on, you mentioned about being able to measure like your accomplishments, or like you're talking about with music, being able to measure it. And I wanted to ask you about like let's learn a little bit about Dan here and about your musical journey of like, at what point, like as you were getting better at the guitar, were there moments like once you were playing on stage and stuff, or just little moments where you knew you were good at this and you knew you were getting really good at this? Or did it just happen all kind of like gradually, and it was just something you did because you played as a kid, so maybe you weren't thinking like this, but I'm sure as an adult when you're like on stage, and curious if you want to comment on like, you wake up the next morning and you're like, holy shit, I'm good at the guitar. Like, I'm proud of myself. Like, comment on.
No, I never had that thought of, oh, I'm good. And I know a couple of guys I've played with, they're like that, and it's weird. And usually they're lacking things. Some guys think that technical proficiency is the be all end all. Like, I'll never be the best, like a Paul Gilbert, technically that proficient. Without making too many excuses, I'm not really built for it. And I'm done with that, like practicing hours a day, doing my scales. And then like I've done that for years and I don't see that same improvement. So I look at it like, how do you measure good?
Good question.
Oh, I'm a good guitarist because this guy here that's more technically proficient. Like I played shows with bands that I watched growing up, and the guitarist came up to me. He's like, oh man, I wish I could write like you. And I'm like, this guy can shred. He shreds me under the table. Technically, he's way better than I'll ever be. But that's kind of a blessing in disguise. I know I'm kind of going all over the place.
That was my next question, actually. Like, had anyone from a fan come up to you after some shows, or you just said another artist who played before or after you who looked like a better shredder, and said that he wished he could write songs like you? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, because he doesn't write, because he's like, he's very technical and he learns everyone else's music, right? But it's just a muscle he didn't work. And it's also a muscle he didn't feel like he needed to work.
Like the creative muscle?
Yeah. Like there's something in me that loves the process of writing, sitting down alone, maybe have a beer and then just like, there's nothing there. And like, what can I do? Like I'll think during the day of a drum beat that I heard. And I'm like, I want to start a song with a drum beat. And then like, I'll kind of have it in my head, and then I'll go on the computer, and then I'll write a couple full songs, delete them. And it's a process, right? But I love that process. Other people don't like it because they want to be the cool guitarist on Instagram that can shred, and that gets views. But it's like, I have no interest in doing that. I just love writing. Whether people hear it or not, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And most people will never hear the stuff that I write because no one knows who I am. No one cares. but it's not for that. It's just for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I totally forget your question. I just
No, you
rambled
answered
on
the
again.
question. You answered the question. Yeah. That's really beautiful. Like, it's like, it's like you're just playing. You're being playful like a child, and you're
Oh,
experiment.
when did you know you were good?
Yeah, that was my initial
Yeah.
question. Yeah, I mean, I want to rewind again because I want to hear your initial like guitar story. Like, when did you first start playing? How did that come into your life? And like, were there moments that you wanted to quit playing because it got too difficult, or like you were so excited to wake up and play? Share, like, when did you start first playing?
I wanted to play drums when I was a kid, and my parents didn't want the drums.
Why did you want to play drums?
Maybe I saw it on TV.
Yeah, let's dive deep back into little Daniel. Yeah.
Man, it's so hard because like when you're thinking back of what you liked as a kid or what you were drawn to, you didn't even have the brain to process then why you wanted to do it.
Your parents probably did though. And then probably if you asked your parents and said like, why did I want to play drums? And they'd be like, oh yeah, you'd always like run around when Led Zeppelin was on TV or whatever.
Yeah, maybe it's like a kinesthetic thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I always played sports growing up, so maybe I like I don't know, maybe it's just the sound of it that I liked, but they didn't want that, so they gave me a guitar.
Because it was too loud.
Yeah, it's too loud. They don't want that shit in the house, right?
Look, Daniel, this instrument is a lot. You can hold it in your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so anyway, so they kind of got you a guitar instead and said,
yeah, I think I started playing with my mom's guitar because she played a bit when she was younger.
oh right,
And there was one in the house, so I started playing that, and then we did lessons, which I didn't like at all, and the teacher wasn't very good. And I'm just learning jingle bells and shit I don't care about. The guy knew nothing about technique. It was just, I didn't like it. So then I just kept trying to play bands that I heard, like this, play along. And then I just did that. I learned a bunch of songs. And then honestly, I haven't really learned a song in like 10 years. Because all I like doing is when I sit down is I like writing. I don't care to really learn someone else's song. Like most what I hear, I can play it pretty much right away because I know my scales and whatnot, right? But I don't feel the need to.
Yeah, cool.
But like having that drive, I can't explain why. And yes, I have quit. I've stopped playing for like almost a year at a time, and I can't. And then I just in my brain, I'm like, I gotta go back. I don't know why I have to go back. It's not my job. I don't know why my brain says that. Maybe it's like just a mental compulsion.
Yeah, that like dives deep into the like, do we have a purpose in life? Or
right?
Like, yeah. I think it's being creative is like it's fun. Honestly, I think what it comes down to is like, yeah, maybe deep down you feel like you do need to write some more music or something for like before you check out, but maybe it's just like really the foundation of it is being playful, like remaining a child. And like, I got to get back to playing guitar because that's something I did when I was a kid, and like recently I've been trying to tap into like my childhood a little bit more. And I was at a little gathering yesterday and these kids were like playing with Lego, and I had like a moment where I was like, holy shit, like that was big in my childhood. Like I had a big Lego box, and like just stuff you don't think about as you like grow older, and like trying to tap into things that happened when we were kids. And
you think there's a reward system like in our brain, in our body for creativity?
Yeah.
Where we have to do it? Because even creative people, even uncreative people, like someone that doesn't play music.
Everyone's creative.
Everyone's creative, right?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, I'm not creative. I could never write a song like you. But then you see like they're decorating their house, and it's like,
it's everywhere.
Well, I don't see maybe decorating the same way you do, but that's their form of creativity, right?
Yeah. I think again, like the foundation of creativity is not just being playful, but the word create is in the word creativity, which like, that's why we're all here. We were created like from your mom or from whatever. Like, so it's a natural thing to do, like to create in life and to grow. And
if you think of like the evolutionary like existence of humans, The only ones that survived and passed on their genes were the ones that were creative. Oh, let's wear like the fur of that bear we just killed,
Yeah.
so we don't freeze, right? Like let's make
Let's build a
bow
canoe.
and arrow. Let's build a canoe so we
Yeah.
can get over to the apples on that island or whatever, right? The only ones that survived. So maybe there's
It's like a primitive thing. Like
yeah, it's
that.
just in us. It's a
Yeah.
part of what humans are. I mean, look at building skyscrapers, like laminate flooring, like walls. It's all creative stuff. It's not art, but it's very creative.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
microphone,
Yeah.
podcasting.
Yeah, there's a difference between like art and creativity, I guess. And it's funny though, like that's one of my favorite topics is like there is creativity everywhere. And you can tell me a little bit more about jujitsu in a second because there's lots of creativity in that, I'm sure. And just look at what people wear. Like I just recently like discovered like, you know, like if you want to call it fashion, it's like, oh, like some colors, like you don't have to do this, but it's like some colors like go better with certain colors than others. And it's like, if you
Right.
just look at what people choose to wear or how people speak, it's like the words they choose in their sentences. Like, are they choosing words that you hear all the time, or are they choosing words that make you think and like, oh, I haven't heard that word before, and like being able to describe something in a different way, like that's creativity. And
That's a
it's
good
like,
point. Yeah, how you string a sentence together is a creative process.
yeah,
That's interesting. Maybe that's why people feel good after a good conversation. Is maybe part of it is because you're just creatively thinking how to
absolutely.
express yourself.
That's one of my favorite things about hanging out with you. And like I had this question down. I'm like, why do you like being friends with me? And like I like being friends with you, many reasons. Like you like to say yes, you like to do things, you're a great listener. One of the major things is like you like having stimulating conversations, and like often being the devil's advocate, you will like make me question my ideas, but you always like to have conversations about life. And it's exciting to know that when I hang out with Dan, like we're going to I'm going to be stimulated, and we'll stimulate each other with ideas and create.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And yeah, like I like talking, and I think like even doing interviews, even you just filling out this little questionnaire was exciting. It like I got to know you on a level like I'm good to talk to you about anything, but like if we're like if you're just finished work, I can't just bust out. So
Right.
like, you know, what are you afraid of in life, Dan? Or like what makes you happy? And like sometimes those questions like are best suited for like written form, or like you're alone and you can like process that question. And like of course like there's
Yeah.
ways to bring this up in conversation like this interview right now, but I think like creating an interview setting where you're not going to be disrupted by the gram, and like,
Yeah.
you know, I get to really get to know you, and you get to know me. And like, you know, how often do you get to do that in life where like even if you go on a drive, like you only have 30 minutes of that drive and then you're at your location or however long. It's like there's
Yeah.
going to be an interruption. So
That was helpful to fill that out too, because the question being like, "What are you afraid of in life?" And I'm thinking, okay, what am I afraid of? And like I see people losing their health, and I see myself slowly going down that road with like work or my back hurting or something, and it made me really aware of like, shit, I have to make a change. And when you're writing it and you're putting it out to the world, and you're saying it to your friend like on camera, it's like, yeah, I should make a change, but it's hard, right? Because the world wants you to work 40 plus hours a week. And if you work 20 or 30 and you spend the rest on like trying to like stay flexible, like cooking, all the shit, having good social connections, people see you as like, that guy's just fucking lazy or something, right? But yeah, I do think for balance, like we have to make a change. But I don't know how to do it, but it made me aware of it when you asked it. I'm like, yeah, like I have to.
yeah, and like it's important to have a team in life and a community that can help fill those gaps and like support each other, whether it's like a girlfriend or like your brothers. And like because you coach each other. And like, you know, with this podcast, Your Favorite Life, and like my business of like being a coach, it's like, yeah, like everyone can use a coach. Like as a coach, like I appreciate being coached because I'm
Yeah.
always open to learning. And like, you know, you say things like that, I don't know how to do that. And it's like, that's why you have friends, or that's why you go see a massage therapist, or like,
Yeah.
you know, you sit down maybe like once a month or once a week with like, you know, your think tank of your friends, and you
Right.
like get a whiteboard out and you're like, okay, bro, like this is what I'm kind of struggling with. Like, can we kind of brainstorm and help navigate this? And like, that's so helpful because I was
Yeah.
saying this the other day, you know how hard it is like starting a business and like, or just living life, and you're trying to do it all yourself. You're like, okay, like I got to learn about my taxes, you know, okay, I got to learn about entrepreneurship, and like, you know, okay, I got this problem in my house. And like, it's good to be able to be very independent with that, but it's hard work. And like, it takes,
Can't get, you're not good at, no one's good at everything. It's taxing. You need, like you said, you need that team.
yeah, where I'd be like, Dan, I've been working on learning about investing and like bringing this to the table. And then you're like,
Right.
oh, like, let me teach you about fixing your toilet, you know?
Yeah.
Like, tell me how did you get into jujitsu? When did that come up in your life?
Well, my dad has a black belt in judo.
Oh, okay.
So
Like when you were younger, he had that, or is that something?
yeah. So he would just sometimes wrestle with us. I never really learned anything, but I sort of did, like just how to move. Like I didn't really think of the moves. Like in jiu-jitsu now, we think of like it being a process. So if you start standing, you have to take the guy down and control him, right? And then there you have to do what's called passing the guard. So you want to get past your opponent's legs so you can go like chest to pin him kind of thing, right? Then go for a submission. That's kind of, there's different ways you can do it, but that's the general way you do it, right?
Yeah, explain it to me because I know nothing about jujitsu, so this is very interesting.
So jiu-jitsu is submission grappling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Submission. So
yeah.
like you stop someone with pain. Like if you have a wrist lock, you'll get pain in your wrist, and then you tap out.
And they submit, yeah.
Yeah, or you choke someone and they tap. You know.
Yeah, you told me a couple stories, like, and I want to touch on that too. Keep talking. Tell me about the beginning of your jiu-jitsu story, and then keep going.
The beginning's like any other regular guy. You watch UFC, and I remember seeing guys that didn't really throw any punches, and they ended the fight. They were in good condition. Their opponent was in good condition, like no stitches or anything. The guy put him to sleep or tapped him out, and everyone goes about their merry way. And I'm like, I thought that was pretty cool. I have like kind of like wimpy hands. They're not, I'm pretty sure I've broken this knuckle before. I got in a scuffle like 5-6 years ago, and I punched the guy in his head, and my knuckle hurt for like 6 months afterwards. And I'm like, shit. I was a white belt, but so I ended up taking the guy's back. But before I did that, I punched him in the head. I'm like, I don't want to punch at all, because like I play music, right?
Yeah.
So what good is that? If I want to play music, I can't have broken knuckles.
Yeah.
So jiu-jitsu is good for that too. It's like
There must be fighters who like they like threw a punch and their knuckle forever hurts. It's like they just wake up.
oh yeah, guys break their hands all the time, and you got to get like pins put in there.
Yeah. So like, what drew you to it? Like, what do you love about training for jujitsu, and like, how does that? I'm sure it makes you happy in life, and like you're learning and being creative, and
It's a great workout. You got to stay flexible to do it, which I think is a problem for a lot of people these days. They
Yeah.
don't stretch enough. I think a lot of falls in older people too is like you have a tight muscle and you can't get your leg out in time. You're working against your own tightness, and then people will fall. I think flexibility is really important, and it's a chess game, right? I don't know. It's just fun.
that's a great way to describe
It's just
it.
fun. Yeah.
It's an activity that encourages other healthy habits. So like, I think you just made me realize that's always nice to have that in life. So it's like, if you develop a gym routine, that's going to promote other healthy habits in your life, because you're going to
Yeah.
go to the gym and then you're going to come home and you're like, oh, well, I better, you know, eat healthy food, or like
Yeah.
I got to stretch now because I just tightened my muscles. And
Right.
like same with jujitsu, you just said like, you know, you got to stay flexible if you want to like be good with competition or do decent. And that way, like you're not going to neglect that area of your life. So it's just like all encompassing, or like encompasses a lot of different health modalities
Yeah.
in the one activity, just like other sports do, like playing hockey. It's like, oh, if I want to like be able to play, I got to like keep my cardio up. So
Yeah.
like I'll probably get on the treadmill when I go to the gym or whatever. And
Yeah. And just like hockey, you get the social aspect too. You know, you have like a team that
Oh,
you're on
yeah.
and see the same people all the time. Physically, you're active. It's mentally challenging to be where you think the puck's going to be, or like same with jujitsu, you got to think, okay, well, this guy's good at leg locks, so I'm going to maybe use this technique so he can't get to my legs. And you know what I mean? It's you can think about it that way, or you can just go in with your game and then try to escape once he gets you, or
yeah,
you know.
it's like a shootout. You're like, am I going to plan my move before I get to the goalie, or I'm going to wait
Yeah.
and see where he is? And
Exactly, yeah. You're using your brain and physically being active at the same time, which is awesome.
yeah, and I think with like something that I drew me to hockey was similar, is like there's so many different options in the game, and it always keeps you think, like every time you jump on the ice, like you never know what's going to happen, and there's the puck's always in a different place, and there's always a different play, a different pass, and like it's just like, you know, it's very stimulating. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably why like shout out to my Lefroy Wave boys from 10 years ago when we played 45 games and we only won 4. So 4 out of about 45. And it was my favorite season ever, because I have dreams all the time where I'm like, I'm back on the ice, and, you know, I always like forget a glove or something. Like that's like another story, but like I'm always missing a piece of equipment. But I really miss playing hockey, like at that competitive level. And even though we only won 4 games all season, and my coach would be like shouting at us and like ruining my confidence and just being like a jerk, I was
Yeah.
like, the brotherhood I had with those guys, you know, yes, I lost 40 games that season, or 41 games, but so did all 15 other guys on the team. We all lost
Right.
together, and we had to figure it out together. Our coaches stopped coming in the dressing room between intermissions because they had nothing to say. They were like, oh, we're down 5-0 again. Here we go again.
Yeah.
But the camaraderie that came with that, the bus rides, the just, you know, communicating with each other, like it's great when you have that with jujitsu too. It's like, it's important. It's like, those are like pillars, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, community, physical exercise, mental workout, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
You told me like you've also like being in good shape. You have to be in good shape to like stay competitive with jujitsu, which also like helps you in sticky situations in life, where you've told me a couple stories, which I'm sure, like, how does that play a role? Like if you're out and about and like something, they need a hero to like step in and diffuse a situation. Like I think you told me one story where like you saved the day, right? And like, you know, my tactic is like, okay, go for the eyes and then like go between the legs.
Krav Maga.
Yeah. Like, so can you explain that story, share that story? You know what I'm talking about? You told a story, you're at like a bar, I think, and
Yeah, that's when I hit the guy in the head with my hand.
that's the same story. Okay.
Yeah, it's the same story. But
But you had
honestly,
to like diffuse the situation. You had to like, you know,
Okay, yeah.
get him to like submit or whatever, because he was
so
being
this is one thing
dangerous.
you learn in jiu-jitsu, right? So there's a belt system, right? And you go in as a white belt, and then you learn a couple moves, and then you become a blue belt. So when you're a blue belt, a lot of the time you beat the white belt because you know the standard moves, but you get your ass handed to you always by the black belt, right? So what you learn is like, I mean, a lot of guys don't learn it. They're just ego driven. They want the belt. That, oh, I'll beat up anyone. It's like, you're an idiot. Anything can happen, right? So I realized that there could be a black belt out there, or anything can happen. Even if you're, Anderson Silva, or like, if you know who that is, or
Yeah,
a
yeah.
UFC star, GSP. If you're out in the middle of the night, you slip on ice when you go to throw a punch, and then the guy kicks you in the head, you can be the best guy in the world, and or you knock the guy out, and then you go to jail for the rest of your life because he fell and hit his head on a curb. So just avoid it.
Yeah.
So that's what I was working. I was building a brewery in Uxbridge, and I was having a beer with my buddy and his friend at this pub, and these guys are, I don't know, 20 feet away, smoking, just staring at us, and I could feel them looking. I don't know what the guy's problem is,
Like
right? I look
looking
over.
for a fight.
They're just looking for a fight, right? And the guy was hammered or on some other shit. I don't know what he's on. And he's talking some shit. And I literally said, dude, I'm like, we don't want any trouble. Like, we didn't mean to offend you, if anything, if we were talking too loud or whatever. Like, and the guys we were with are really calm. They're not like getting drunk and belligerent. They're just very quiet guys, right? I don't want any trouble. And he just keeps yapping. We're just ignoring him, right? But then when we're done, we pay our bill, we have to get out, and we had to like walk past this guy.
He like sticks his foot out.
Pretty much.
Like movie.
Yeah, just like a typical coward. He picked the smallest guy in our group, and there's 2 of them and 3 of us. And like, he picks the smallest guy, and I think he just punched him or just ran at him and attacked him or something, right? So I watched for a couple seconds, and they're usually guys that can't fight are pretty spazzy, especially if they're drunk or something, right? So I'm just watching, and then, that's one part I missed, is the guy's like, you guys want to fucking get stabbed? Like, when we're sitting there, we're like, dude, we don't want any trouble.
Right.
Just go fucking cut you open. I'm from, what do you say, Mississauga or something like that. I'm like, dude, we're just eating dinner, man. Like,
I'm just building breweries, like relaxing, having a beer.
Yeah, he's trying to like, he has issues clearly, right? So anyways, he jumps the smallest guy in the group, and then they're rolling around, and I'm thinking, oh fuck, he said he had a knife, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
So
that's in the back of your mind.
Yeah. So I'm like,
or front of your mind. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, when they're on the ground, I'm like, shit, I gotta take this guy out, because these 2 guys I'm with, they can't do anything. And if this guy has a knife, like, someone might get stabbed, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, shit. So they're getting up off the ground, and as the guy's getting up, I just gave him the old 1-2 to the head, uppercut him in the head, and then he kind of flies back, and then I take him down, and then I get to his back, and then I'm just holding him there, trying to make sure that I have like one arm, and then I have the other arm here, because I don't know, right? And I'm trying to look out for his buddy too, because he might kick my head in or something,
like break
right?
a bottle and like.
Yeah. So I'm like holding him, like choking him like that. I'm like, are you done? Are you done? And then I get up, and then he is on the ground for a second, and then we start walking away, and then he gets back up.
Wow.
And then he comes after, I think he came after the same guy again. I don't know why. So yeah, he got up off the ground, and then he just attacked him again. And then I just gave him like a kick back, and I was just screaming. I'm like, fuck off, man. We don't want any fucking thing to do with you. Just fuck off. I don't know what your problem is, right?
Yeah.
And then we just kind of walked back like this to make sure he didn't come from behind. And he's just like, fuck you. Just kind of like drugged out or something. He just kind of stood there. But that's fucked up. Yeah, I don't want that.
Was this in the restaurant?
No, we were on the patio. So,
but it was at the restaurant.
It was at the restaurant. We're on the patio, and we had to walk past, like there was a gate there, and we're it happened in the parking lot. Yeah, messed up. But like, yeah, no interest in fighting at all. It's just the jiu-jitsu class is fun, but like, if you think that you're tough shit, you're just deceiving yourself, right? Because anything can happen in the street.
So eventually they walked
yeah, his
away.
buddy was like, stop, man, you got to stop, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was like, tell him to fuck off. And then we were just backing up.
Did like police show up or anything?
No, I think there may be a couple people just looking on, but we just left.
So like having trained in jiu-jitsu, like probably really helped in that moment. Like if you hadn't had, if that was me in that situation, like I said, I've only got 2 moves. So
right. I was very aware of like, I was able to take his back. I knew what my goal was. And also, yeah, my goal was take his back and make sure that I have his hands under control, right? Because in case he grabs something. The training definitely helps, right? And I was pretty new at the time too, but this guy was just a spaz drunk idiot. Um, yeah, it's messed up. People are messed up, dude.
Yeah.
But I was so proud because I'm like, I told him, like, dude, we don't mean any offense. Like, we didn't mean, I was trying to just diffuse the situation.
Yeah, it sounds like you did everything right, and
Yeah.
like unfortunately, it was like unavoidable, like the physical confrontation.
Right.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
for you. Like
Good
that's
story, eh? Well, you see that clip on YouTube.
Yeah, like I can, like you're like, yeah, I punched this guy and my knuckle hurt for 6 months. I'm like, yeah, I mean, taking one. Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't. Yeah, it's like projecting. He probably is just projecting some pain that he has in his own life, and he's looking to
Maybe his dad abused him or something
Yeah,
like that, or
wants to.
maybe he wants to get in a gang or something and just stab someone. I don't fucking know, right? But I remember thinking that I don't want to punch people because I play music, right? Because I don't want to like, and I'm lucky because it was this knuckle that hurt, and it was my hand was swollen, but like I pick with this hand, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, I'm like, dude, I should have just not even punched him,
Yeah.
because it actually kind of hurt me probably more than him and his fucking big concrete noggin.
Yeah, sometimes you got to think quickly though. And like, what's the quote? It's like the best form of defense is like, I don't know what the quote is. You'll probably know, like not fighting at all. Like the best way to like, if you're in a situation where there's about to be a fight, like the best way is to diffuse it verbally. Like
Yeah.
However I don't know. Do you know there's like a quote?
Like if you can win a battle without throwing a punch,
Yeah.
that's good, right?
Yeah. And like,
But that's even with me, it was probably an ego thing, right? I'm like, I could just knock this guy out and then it'll be a good story. I'm sure there's something in my brain that's like, why did I feel the need to punch him?
yeah.
I mean, then I hit him like right on his head. I'm like, people's skulls are hard, man. Like I didn't hit him in the jaw because he was moving like this, right? But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, you get in situations where, unfortunately, like I said, there isn't a lot of time to think, and like it becomes like animalistic, and you're reacting, and like, it's heated, and
Right.
you don't have to. You might not have rational thought of like,
Right.
because you don't have time. Like this guy just said he had a knife. Like that's like could be pretty triggering, and
People are messed up, dude. Just glad he didn't do anything, right? I want to hear what you got on that piece of paper. You got some good questions. Jeff's good at this. Jeff's
yeah.
the best.
Yeah, I loved reading your answers. Like I've known you for like 15 years and at least, and it's cool to learn more about you like through these questions. And
Speaking about preparedness, like I played another show. We had lights on the stage, like halogen lights, and they fell over and started like burning the carpet, and the carpet was going up. So I had to like kick it out. Actually, another good story for
like
you.
while you're like
Yeah, while I'm playing.
doing a solo and like,
And probably one of the funniest ones was we were at a show. I don't know if I told you this, but we were at a small pub, and Tyler, our singer before, yeah, freaking guy, he gets up on the bar. So he's got a cordless mic, right? We're playing at the front of the bar, and he walks across the bar and starts screaming in this guy's face at the back of the bar. And those guys are just trying to enjoy the show and mind. They don't want to be in the mosh pit or,
Yeah.
they just want to watch and just do their own thing, have a beer. So Tyler's basically spitting in his face, and then the guy hits him, and then Tyler starts punching him.
while still singing. Like he's like,
No, he stopped singing, but they're fighting, and they were going all over, like knocking chairs over and people over, and we're still playing the song. I'm like, fuck it, why not? Like he'll end this shit, and then it'll be sweet.
get
We'll
back
keep
up
going,
here.
yeah. And they came close to my shit. And I'm like, you're not fucking knocking over my amp. So I had to like kick them back while I'm playing, but it was hilarious.
only at metal shows.
Yeah, it was fun. That's a stupid move. You don't do that shit to guys that are minding their own business, but
Yeah.
it's a good story.
Why don't you comment on that? Like you play pretty heavy metal music as well as you like playing like soft guitar music or acoustic music. And I know like Dallas Green talked about that too. He said he always writes a song with a slow version and then a really fast version of it. I thought that was interesting. But as a musician and artist, like, what do you get out of expressing yourself in a heavy metal type song versus like playing a soft acoustic song? You know, of course, like Yin Yang probably plays a role in that story, but why don't you comment on that?
I'm sure it's different for everyone, but like I've had to deal with depression on and off for a while, right? And I think for me at least, part of what that is you just don't feel as much. It's not, you just, sometimes I just feel like not even keel, but like it takes more extreme stuff to feel something, right?
Gotcha.
So like
Like
really,
jumping out of a plane.
yeah,
Yeah.
did that one.
Yeah, but keep going. That's what I mean. I totally get it, because it's
Right.
like if you're playing an acoustic song, like versus you're plugging in, and
Yeah.
now it's like through your whole body, and like
Yeah, when you feel like the speaker's pushing air, you feel it, the sound resonating through your body.
yeah,
I mean, acoustic's got its own thing too. Like,
intimate and like
yeah, and that you can feel a lot of shit with just a guy or girl and a guitar. You know, like that can really move you. Like Johnny Cash's "Hurt." I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, it's just him and a guitar,
yeah, great
all
song.
9 Inch Nails. But his version, it's like, and all the Matt Good stuff, like the Hospital Music record, just him and a guitar. It's, yeah, I mean, whatever you feel, that's what I like writing. And I like country, I don't resonate with it. I don't know what it is. It irritates me. So I guess it does resonate with me in an irritable way.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's different because like you didn't grow up like in the country road, take me home, you know, whereas you grew up in this winter Canadian,
Yeah.
like, you know, get that anger out or whatever.
Dude, it makes me feel alive. I don't know if it literally gets my pulse going, or I release adrenaline when I hit a breakdown or something like that, or when you hear the double kick going. But man, you feel it.
That's such a good way of describing it, because I talk about that with like exercising. It's like you can go to the gym and like crush it with weights. Like you just, you know, you squatted like 4 sets of like this really heavy weight, and then, you know, did all this other weight stuff, and you crush it and you're like tired and you're like proud and you're like, I did good today. But there's something different about like if you run 49 kilometers like you'd written on here that you did one time, or you get the heart rate up. Whereas like your sister said that playing hockey the other day, she's like, wow, I burned like 1,000 calories like playing hockey -20. Like there's something important, I think, when you're living your life. And maybe it's different as you get older. Maybe you have to be a little bit more careful. But like getting your heart rate up and sweating, like, yeah, you can go to the gym and lift weights, and that's great for your muscles and different things. But like getting that heart rate up, and yeah, I bet when you're playing that heavy music, it does, like, your blood pressure goes up. Like,
Yeah.
I read in this book the other day, he said like your blood pressure goes up maybe just slightly anytime someone walks in the room. Like maybe it's like an animalistic thing. Somebody new walks in the room and you're like, you know, and your blood pressure maybe just moves a little bit, or you know what I mean? I thought that was like interesting.
Yeah, I did the hot and cold shower this morning. So it was like 3 rounds of like fully cold, only for like 30 seconds. And then I go back for like a couple minutes on warm. I feel better like the whole day. Sometimes it lasts 2 days. I feel noticeably better, more awake during the day. Even like movement wise, I feel like I can move better, not as sluggish, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just getting like the lactic acid or build up shit out of your muscles, but something small like that can make your whole day better.
Yeah, I find like that's a good word, sluggish. It's like anyone out there listening to this podcast is like one of the most important things I learned in my life is whatever diet you're on and however much food you're eating, pay attention to how you feel 30 minutes to an hour after eating whatever you're eating. And like, because, you know, if you do feel sluggish or tired, you're not supposed to feel tired after you eat, right? Like, you know,
Are you sure about that?
like,
But if all the blood's going to your stomach and you're digesting a meal, maybe some of the blood's going away from your alertness. Like right after you eat,
that's a good point.
You're not
devil's
ready.
advocate, damn it.
Devil's advocate, right? You're not ready to, like, if we were cavemen, we're not ready to hunt a gazelle or something
Right.
like that
At
after
the
we
end
had a
of-
big meal.
Right. Like lions will just like eat one meal a day, maybe, or one meal every 4 days, whatever. And
Right.
they'll just eat a massive meal. And like, then they'll like be, because they ate so much, they like pass out. Right. I don't know. I'm not a lion, but like, I'm just trying to,
I don't know.
I guess I meant like better when you eat something. Yeah. If you don't eat a lot of something, but it just particularly when you eat a certain food, does that affect you differently than eating a different piece
Right.
of food? And like, whether it's like, is it 3 cookies that's too much for you? Or is it like 1 cookie that it's like, that's good. That works for my system. I don't feel tired and sluggish. I guess
Yeah.
that was my point. Whereas a lot of people will like eat and then they'll like go on with their day and like, oh, I'm tired. It must have been the coffee, right? Like
Right.
getting the coffee drop, or like because I didn't get enough sleep last night. But it's like maybe it's because of like what you just ate, or you
Yeah.
stood up right after eating and you started walking around, and like, you know, or you're driving to jujitsu, eating in the car, and like,
Yeah, that's another good point, is like feeling like you're in a rush and then just shoveling something down. It just doesn't digest as good. So part of it is, like you said, what you eat. But another part of it is like, are you allowing yourself to digest the food? Are you in a constant state of stress? Like, oh, fuck, I got to answer this call. I got to make this email and I got to go do this. Or like, you know, if your house is flooding, like happened to my place, and maybe I'm not ready to digest a good meal. Maybe I'm in like action mode.
yeah,
Like, I don't care about
like,
food. I got to go do this right now.
that's a good point. Like, where's your head at when you're eating? Like,
Right.
you know, of course I've been there many times. Like when you're just shoveling food down because you know you're not going to be able to eat for the next 3 or 4 hours or whatever. Like you're like, well, I
Right.
better eat something because I A, don't want to be hungry, and B, I don't want to not have energy. Like,
Yeah. Maybe your body just holds it in your stomach so you can like go play the hockey game or go to work or whatever, deal with the flood. Because it's like, we can't digest this
and
right
it'll
now.
digest it later.
Yeah, I'll digest it later. And then you feel like an upset stomach.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not a doctor. What do I know?
I am a human, though.
That's
you
my
know.
2 cents,
You
though.
are the doctor of your body. Like, you
Yeah.
know, no one knows your body better than yourself. Like,
Yeah,
unless you get like an X-ray or something. and,
that's
like,
true.
a
Good
brain
point.
scan.
MRI. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some questions. Good episode so far. This has been quite stimulating and fun. And one of my favorite things you wrote was, I asked you, what were your proud accomplishments? And you wrote 2 really nice things that I was not expecting. Like when you think of accomplishments, and you said, A, being a good listener with people, and being present with people. Like, what a great answer. So like, you can comment on both those. Like, have you always been a good listener? And like, is it part of like, were you ever shy in life? Were you a shy person where you just tend to be in the background and listen more? Or like, how did your listening journey evolve?
That's a hard one to unpack. And when you said that, I was thinking of sometimes I'll like interject or interrupt a bit.
Which is okay. Sometimes it's necessary. Like sometimes, like I got to a point, see now I'm interjecting. I got to a point where like I became such a good listener, and like not perfect, I don't want to be like big ego here, but like gotten a lot better at listening, where sometimes you're in environments where like interjecting is very important because the other person might just be going on and on and on depending on the situation. Or if you're with people who talk so much, like when I'm with my mom and my uncle and they just love talking, it's like I'll never be able to say something unless I interrupt. And it's just part of that culture of like,
Right.
or if like I've been in like with like people from the Caribbean and they're just storytellers and they're talking over each other, and like that's just part of like how everyone communicates, where maybe there's this stigma of like, oh, don't ever interrupt. It's like sometimes it's, if you got something really important, you don't want to forget it. Like,
But dude, this is the secret. This will be your clip. When I'm interjecting, it's actually me listening. It's me listening to my own thoughts. So you're saying something to me. We're talking about listening. This is the topic at hand right now. And then my brain says, "Oh, you have something valuable to offer." So it has a choice. It's like, does this have to be said now? If I say this now, will it steer Jeff's thought pattern somewhere else?
yeah. Or
Does he need me to add something to the conversation? Should I just shut up? Like, you're listening to your own thoughts.
Whoa, deep.
Yeah. So some people will just, they don't realize,
Double listening.
right. They don't realize they're listening to their own thoughts. So they just interject because they identify with their thoughts, right?
Right.
But if you can just take one step back and be like, any thoughts you have, they're not you. They're just thoughts that like your brain's producing. So you have a choice. Do I act on those? Do I speak about them? Because dude, I have thoughts all the time that I keep to myself. You know, say if you have a girlfriend, you see someone pretty, you don't have to say, oh, that one person's pretty.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe sometimes you'll say it to see how she reacts. Is she, you know, jealous, or does she not care? Like sometimes
Does
listening.
she think she's pretty? Like, it's good to acknowledge the
Right, there's
beauty of people.
Many
Yeah.
reasons why you can or cannot, or should or should not say something, right? So yeah, listening, it's complicated, dude. We could talk about this for hours.
That was like the best answer through this whole podcast. That was pretty cool. And in The Untethered Soul, he calls it your inner roommate. He said, imagine if the thoughts in your head, you could personify them. And so it's now that person is sitting beside you, and everything that you think is coming out of that person's mouth, and they're your inner roommate. So instead of identifying with it, like you said, just knowing that your brain is a machine, it's going to like, you know, oh, that car just drove by. Like my brain was like, oh, that was a car. Like my brain didn't need to tell me that. Like I know that's a car. Like,
Yeah.
but it happens. And like to have that separation is very important. And
Yeah.
to know when to like, and it's never perfect, but like you said, like knowing, is this a conversation where Jeff is venting, or like he needs someone to listen to him, he's got to get this thought out, and then I'll comment when he's done? Or is this a tense situation with my girlfriend, and like, or if you're just having a fun conversation and like, and you're, especially if you're like laughing and stuff, sometimes it's good to like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you got to know what you want out of life too. If you're just waiting till someone's done speaking just so you can be heard, like if it's an ego thing, you're not listening. Like with your question, what makes you a good listener? When did you find out that was something important that you valued? That question is like, imagine typing that in Google. Now I'm the person that's behind the computer and all these results come up. Well, I can tell Jeff about when I started listening a lot. I could give him this story about how it's a Google, you know, like something typed in Google. Like there's so many things you can do. And if you don't listen to your own answer and choose which of those is the best, you know, then what are you doing? You're just on autopilot, you know?
yeah, you're thinking, you're like, you're having ideas, you're being creative. And it actually wasn't my question. I didn't say like, I mean, yeah, it was my question, but you initially, like I said, what are your proud accomplishments? And
Yeah.
you said being a good listener. So like that obviously evolved over time, with you noticing. You're like, did you want to become a better listener? Or was there a time where you noticed like, I'm not a very good listener, I need to work on this?
And this is the tough part because like even in me answering that, it's like I feel like I'm obligated to answer that question in my response before I answer the question that you had right now. If that makes any sense, it's kind of convoluted. But sometimes people will ask you a question, and if I think that you're looking for an answer that's, oh, he wants just to hear an interesting answer, maybe I'm sort of answering a different question.
Yeah.
Because what I heard, even though you asked me a question, what are your proudest accomplishments? I hear a different question. You know, I hear what's a good story that we can get into the meat and potatoes of on the podcast, right? But anyways,
That's a great answer. I'm gonna take that answer, because I'll just tell you quickly. Like when I knew I needed to work on my listening was like when your brother like shouted at me when like he was telling a story and we were traveling, and he's like, I kept interrupting him and he was trying to tell a story, and he's like, Jeff, like shut up. And like for me personally, in that specific moment, I needed to hear that. I needed to be shouted at. Like,
right.
at least that's how I was able to learn from that. I was like, wow, like I need to be more respectful. Like, and in that situation.
But maybe you
specifically.
didn't really value what he had to say.
Yeah,
So
I don't
maybe
remember what it was about.
I think you
but-
are a good listener because you say, oh, remember when this happened like 10 years ago or whatever? And I'm like, oh shit, sometimes I don't remember some of that stuff.
Yeah, and that was like in the past, like that was like 10 years ago. So it was like I was a different person. So
Right.
yeah, there's different. It's funny, like I didn't realize having this conversation about listening how many levels there are to it. It's like being a good listener is letting the person finish, not interrupting, like making eye contact, maybe like being able to exactly what you just said. You're not the first person who said that to me. It's like being able to recall past moments or memories or things that, a friend has said to you or made you feel. Like that's part of being a good listener too, is like going throughout your life after this and being able to recall certain things. That's part of being a good listener too. It's like, you know, it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
So my ex had a little kid, 2-year-old, and this goes back to the listening point,
Listening to how somebody's feeling, that's another one. Like
right?
listening to someone's body language, and you're like,
Yes, their body language. It's not just what you say, right?
yeah,
And even how people like say how they dress or what they drive or how they walk. That's all listening. That's all awareness. What are you taking it in? What are you taking in, right? But back to the kid thing, it's like a lot of kids are adults are just, they get so used to telling them what to do. Oh, get your jacket on, get that. And I found that like just being present with the kid and looking at him, and he wants to show me his dinky cars or Legos and shit. And like just being present with that child, I felt was so important, because a lot of people don't do that. Like I got down on the ground, played with his Legos, and I was just there. It's a simple thing, but a lot of people don't do it. They just think, oh, let him play with his little toys by himself. And then this kid is lonely for years because the parent doesn't want to engage. But if you just, like you said, look, even a child that can't speak yet, look them in the eye, and you can engage on a nonverbal level, right? Like that's what monkeys do. Like one monkey gives another monkey a banana. It's like a friendship and trust ensues, right?
Yeah.
It's like how animals learn trust, how they learn love, how they learn affection. It's like not necessarily verbal, right?
yeah, and they like communicate with like their thoughts or feelings or something too, like their body language and like maybe
Yeah.
not thoughts, but like yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned like kids, because my sister has a 2-year-old, and I watch them, like her and Sean, and like how much energy they put into like following the child around, doing something so simple and kind of like mundane for like hours. Like we're having this conversation, like this is stimulating, this is interesting, it's new, it's novel, right? It's
Right.
creative. But then you've got a child who's just playing with this dinky car for like a grown man. You're kind of like,
Yeah.
you put 5 minutes of energy into that, and then like you're like, oh, okay, this is like kind of boring now. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's different if it's like actually your kid. Obviously, it's like there's a different connection there. Like I'm speaking as like an uncle, but like it's necessary to just stop thinking about such novelty and like just being present, like
Yeah.
and observing your child and interacting with them, or the child, and having fun. And like I'm not a parent, so like I notice like when my sister and her boyfriend, how they spend with, like they just follow him around, and it's like
Yeah.
oh, okay, like there they go again, he's chasing
Yeah.
that ball. It's just like back and forth.
That's
It's
the
like,
only time that kid will ever be two in
right,
his life.
yeah,
And you can sit there and like you can take it in for a moment and be like, this shit is crazy. That kid was like half sperm, half egg, and then grew inside someone. Now it's like fucking playing with Legos. And I can just see like this is
now it's like
a
having,
human brain learning, you know?
now they're having like now they're having their own thoughts, and they're like forming their own ideas,
Yeah,
and like
saying
they're
words for the first time.
yeah, deep.
Like that kid I mentioned, like the first time he ever said, I miss you. He said that to me. He's like, I miss you, Danny. He gave me a big hug, right? And I feel like part of that is just being present with them. Because like, people, they get busy with work or whatever, but you just give a little bit of attention to someone, and you can create such a strong bond. And that can go forever. I remember when I worked at this place years ago, shitty job in a factory, and the guy came in with Timbits and coffee, and we all stopped for 5 minutes. And I can still remember that to this day, because he didn't have to do that. It's like just being present, you know, that goes to, you know, some people can carry a moment like that, just a 5-minute moment, the rest of their life. You know, my dad said stories about when he was 13 years old and his teacher said something to him that stuck with him. He's over 60. But those are the lessons that stay with you, or you don't have them and you feel lost, right? So value people's time and like listen to what they have to say.
It's really cool what sticks with you throughout your life. It's like when you read a book. I think I told you this before, sometimes when I'm reading a book and if something like really stands out for me, like whether I'll read it a second or third time, or I'll stop reading and like kind of look up into the room and pause for like 30 seconds or something and just kind of like absorb what I just read, like whether it's just like a line or like a paragraph. And I feel like that not only helps like retain better what just inspired you or moved you, and also just like to be present and like knowing that this present moment is going to stick with me. Yeah. I like doing that. And it's cool to just think about the strange things that do stick with us and maybe try and unpack it more. Like, why did that moment, like that you're working this terrible job and it was like Santa Claus shows up and like
right?
with all these Timbits and you're like, whatever his name was, Fred. And you're like, you know.
Yeah. And regardless of whatever happens with this podcast, maybe you don't want to do it anymore in a week. Maybe you make it huge. We will be able to have the fact that we had a good in-depth conversation. Like, you can't take that away.
Yeah, dude, you're sitting here right now. Like the other day I had my dad sitting in front of me. You know, he's like 68. It was his birthday like 2 days ago and we did an episode and I'm like, you know, it's your birthday right now. Like, you spent a year in the hospital. Like, he's got like a whole like scar in his neck, like a whole scar in his stomach. I'm like, he's sitting here right now, like having this conversation with me.
Yeah.
And like, I know he's going to get tired in the next 20 minutes and we're going to have to shut down the episode. But I'm like, and he's telling me stories about his dad and like how he misses his dad. His dad was like an encyclopedia and like he was really inspired by his dad. And I'm just trying to like hold on to that moment. Like, it's all fleeting, right? But I was inspired by that answer. Like, you are proud of being present with people. And like, obviously that has to do with being around some kids. And like, was there other things in your life that made you want to be more present? Like, you're not some guy who's usually on his phone a lot, like when we're hanging out, like, you know, like that's something I noticed. Like,
I don't know if something made me like that, but it's the moment in itself is the reward. Like, if my parents went through a divorce and sometimes they just needed someone, because they're the adult, right? They just needed someone there to just talk to or just be around, just to listen to whatever they're feeling, right? I guess you get some sort of validation with that. It's therapeutic, right? Like, I've been to a therapist before, and this is like a small a version of that. Like, it's I don't know, you feel lighter after. What's the word I'm looking for? When you talk about how you feel, you feel like liberated of those thoughts. They don't weigh you down. It's cathartic, yeah.
Yeah. And
everyone needs it.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, giving people your attention, or like that guy bringing the donuts, like just an act of service. Like, you know, you can't do it for everyone all the time because you got to stay balanced. But like, stop thinking of, like, sometimes, like, you know, I'll be like, okay, I got to run these errands, and I'm like, well, I like running my errands when like I can do them all at the same time. Like, most people are probably like that, where they're like, okay, like I got to get my oil changed and then I got to stop at the grocery store. I'm like, well, I'll do that when I'm going out so I can all do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, that's most convenient. That's like the workaholic kind of thing. Like, but like, sometimes I'm like, not put that stress or that little pressure is like, you know, if someone asks you for a ride and you're like, I don't really want to give them a ride, but you're like, why not? Like, I'm going to help them. And like, there doesn't need to be like a reward to it. Like, yeah, there's a reward, small reward of like helping someone, but it's like, I guess I'm just trying to say it's like back to the movie thing that I'm talking about. Like, when I watch a movie, like, a part of me is like, I got to learn something from this movie. And like, you can do that with any movie now. Now you can watch a movie, any movie critically. You can notice the lights, the way the camera angles, the words they use in the story, the moments that movie. You can watch a movie like very critically, and you don't always have to, like I said. But for me, that was something where I was like, I have to learn something from whenever I'm doing something, right?
Right.
But sometimes it's good to just like,
Well, you thought you had to consciously learn something.
right.
Because if you just watched it and maybe you didn't think of anything, maybe it's in there.
Oh,
And
all
then
the
you're
time.
like-
That happens with books. You read a book, you read this like 300-page book, and then I love talking about that. And then like, you know, a month later, you're having a conversation with someone, and then like that part of the gears are moving in your brain, and that's there. It's like, and then
Yeah.
you start talking about this thing from this book where you're like,
Or you
oh,
use a new word you've never used before.
yeah, you're like, I didn't even know that was in there. Like,
Back to creativity, that happens too when I'm playing music. That's the one part I love about writing, is that sometimes if you're okay with making mistakes, when I'm writing, I'll make a lot of mistakes, notes that sound like crap, but then my hands do something different, and it's almost like I'm just on autopilot. And then sometimes I sit back after like a couple hours of writing, I'm like, I've never moved my hands in that position before. I've never done that kind of sound before. And maybe I heard it somewhere, and maybe part of my brain was trying to replicate it. But you're just open to whatever kind of happens, and slowly trying to guide yourself within maybe a scale that you know or whatever. But you just do something you don't even realize. And that just came from passively listening to music, or you heard something on TV, and then your brain's like, well, I want to make that sound, and you just do it. Or even jujitsu. Like, I remember I watch on Instagram all the time. I follow these jujutsu guys, and then I go to the gym, and then I'll do a certain guard pass or something I just do it. I'm like, I never thought of doing that. I never thought, okay, I'm going to try this pass today or this arm bar. I just did it. And I'm like, after the session, the roll's over, I'm like, I never meant to do that. How did I do that? My body just did it.
yeah, that's cool.
I just passively absorbed it. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not passively, because when I'm watching it, I'm very attentive, but I'm not thinking, oh, I want to do it later.
You actually wrote something about when I asked you about traveling and novelty and learning things like when you're not consciously doing it. And I had a thought there when you were talking about, like, say, like you were driving a NASCAR race, and like, I don't know anything about NASCAR. I don't know why I'm thinking about, but I was thinking about driving. So say you were like driving, and there's like all these cars that are moving really fast on a highway. Like, highway is not the best example. Imagine you were doing like NASCAR.
Yeah.
And you have to find this like flow where like you have to, like, you're going to be going so fast and there's all these moving parts, but you have to find a way to fit with all these different things. And I think that can happen with like music. And one of my favorite musicians, he plays for this band Gaslight Anthem, and he said a lot of writers do this too, like who write books. He will pull out a piece of paper and he'll just write a bunch. He'll just start writing, and then like most of it will be garbage, but there'll be like one line, and then he'll take that line that sticks out and put it on another piece of paper, and then start the process again. And eventually then there'll be two lines, but then it'll jump probably from 2 to 20, and boom, you're done.
Right.
Because like you've like got through that gate where you've found that flow in all the moving parts, and then you're not even like having to think about it. Your brain is just like firing. It's in this like, you know.
Yeah, getting into the flow state is something it's like a secret weapon, and like being able just to relax and get yourself into it quicker.
Yeah.
Like some people, I find, like, I've played music with a lot of people, they can't get in that flow state. They have like one riff, and then they do it over and over and over again, and they think that they're like, oh, check out this new riff. It's on the same 2 strings, it's the same 2 notes, but then they maybe picked it differently. There's only one thing different. Whereas like if I write something different, it's like my hands going up and down the neck differently. I'm going up and down the strings differently. And maybe I had a different effect on, like, it's so different. But that's just because like you get into this flow state, and there's a certain, you can't describe how you get there or what it is. It's something's computing in the back of your head that's like, we'll do this, do that. And you're just letting it happen.
Yeah. It's like part of, yeah. Good point. Letting it happen. You're like playing, and like, you're not thinking too much. And like someone said, like the state, a flow state is like something that's like just challenging enough that it's like not too challenging, and there's like that's the room for like growth. And like once you can get into that state where like, because if it wasn't challenging, it would be boring, right? But it's just challenging enough where your brain like evens out, and then like this zone appears where you're like getting all these ideas and like doing things that, oh, how didn't I think of that before? And you speak about that with traveling. You said like, I said, what do you like about traveling? And you'd said, you know, just being able to stop thinking about like the taxes and like the stress of everyday life, and just being able to walk out the door and doing whatever. And I wanted to share a quick story. Like when we go to Manitoulin in the summertime and we stay at these cabins, there'll be like 8 cabins. We're all in the woods, and everyone at these 8 cabins we know, their family and friends. So it's like a little community for like a week. And this summer, like, it was funny how I noticed the different thoughts you start having when you're on vacation, like kind of like freeing your mind, where like the thoughts change from like, oh, I got to email that guy tomorrow. What am I going to make for dinner? Because I don't really have a lot of time tonight. Like, oh, do I have gas in my car? Like those are like your everyday thoughts, right? Like,
Yeah.
whereas like I'm on vacation in the woods, and the thoughts start changing to like, oh, like, so who's having the fire tonight? And like, are we doing a community meal? What time are we watching the sunset?
Right.
And like, you know, oh, I better go for a swim today. Where am I going to read my book? Like in the woods here. And
Those
it's like,
thoughts you just mentioned, they're all like rewarding thoughts. Oh, who's going to like do the fire? That's something to look forward to. When am I going to read my book? You're looking forward to that.
something
When am
to
I
look
going to,
forward to.
right?
Yeah.
But like the thoughts that we have in this everyday life, oh, I got to fill my car with gas. I got to like pay my insurance. None of that's like intrinsically rewarding. I mean, you could try, like some guys say, like you got to be present in everything you do and like meditate and everything and like pumping your gas. And it's like, yeah,
I've read that. Yeah.
that maybe that helps you get through it, but I don't think there's any intrinsic biological reward of pumping gas, as opposed to like when you sit down in front of a fire, most people feel good. Like you just feel better sitting in front of the fire.
And you're around everyone else who's having those same feelings.
Right.
Like,
You're not
and-
alone in -20 pumping gas. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was neat, because I bet when you've gone to like Costa Rica before, and like I know that was probably a long time ago, but like, you know, or you've gone to like snowboarding in the mountains in BC, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, taking a break from the job and the life and worrying about your tenants and things like that, and then being able to like wake up and you're like, oh, what hill did we hit today? You know, what's that like being on vacation, traveling, and how does that change?
Dude, it fucks with your head when you're at the top of a mountain. Say you're a skier, snowboarder. When you're looking around and you just see skyline, clouds, and mountains, and you're warm, you got your stuff on, whatever, your jacket. You're not seeing, oh, 2-for-1 pizza today, and like,
Yeah,
you know,
we talked
go to the
about that,
mall,
yeah.
and like, there's not these ads everywhere. You're not looking at your car and thinking, shit, I got to get an oil change. You're just looking.
You're back home.
You just hear the sound of the wind going through the trees, right? And like the snow falling from the sky. You're just observing the beauty of the world. It's like, oh yeah, there's a world out there. It's not just get from A to B to like paint the wall or frame the person's house or do their bathroom, go back home, eat, do it again. Like you can stop and breathe and just look around. And like taxes don't matter when you're in the mountains. Like if you're like a fox or something in the mountain, you're just out there. It's freeing. Your mind is free to just observe instead of to have to think. Yeah, that's what I get at least from traveling. Seeing the Mayan ruins, I'm just standing there looking. This is crazy. These fucking guys built this shit. Who knows what the hell they were doing?
Yeah.
But how the fuck did they lift these rocks? Who knows?
They lifted them with their minds.
With their minds,
That's what they
maybe.
say.
Maybe.
They're from other planets.
Right?
Ancient aliens. Yeah.
But there is no answer. You're just looking, and it's just, you're in awe.
Yeah. And you're present, and I like what you said. You're not thinking. You're not trying to solve things. Like you're just, it is what it is, and you're just being, and you're like, you're alive. and you're like, you can feel your heart. Like I felt that in the mountains in Nepal, where like you could hear your heart beating and like, and the wind, and you're just like, I like that little pause there because
there's images which people can't see on the video, but both of our brains, we're having some sort of image of when we were traveling, right?
yeah. Well, yeah. Cause
That'll be the new podcast in 20 years. We'll have something hooked up to our brain. You'll be able to see the images we're thinking of. Like, this is the time I went to Costa Rica. It'll just pop up on the screen.
yeah, on the screen right here. Yeah. Actually, maybe we'll get close to wrapping it up, and cause you probably got,
I still haven't had dinner.
yeah, I got soup. I can make some soup.
I got the girlfriend. She's probably
Homemade
pissed
soup.
off. I've been so long.
Yeah.
She's
Okay.
got something there.
Yeah, we can just being in a different environment made me hyper aware of how my body mind changes without me even trying. And we just talked about that, like effortless transformation. You know, I think it's important. I think it is highly important to put yourself in those environments where your brain does go into a certain wave state where, like, you know, when you're in Shavasana yoga and you're just relaxed.
Yeah.
And like all the thinking that you've done finally has a time to be absorbed and recharge, you know, because you'll wake up and you got a great sleep. Maybe you went for a massage, but you know, there's still gears turning. Like there's so many gears in there, but you know, spending it like taking a break from life, if you have that luxury to reset your brain, or people do it with stillness meditation or walking meditation, and it's part of transformation. It's not always doing. It's like, yeah, it's good you're really good at pulling the trigger and go and getting things done and not overthinking. And then it's
But
good.
when you do that, yeah, you need the balance of quiet.
Yeah.
Like Shavasana, like you said, when you've just spent yourself, you're exhausted, and then you're just sitting, you're like, all you're focusing on is your breath. You're not thinking about, oh, fuck, I have a flat tire and my house flooded. Like, this is all shit that happened the past week.
And you're going to have to think about that eventually.
You got to think about it. It's got to get done, right?
Yeah. But take a break from it.
But yeah, you need to have that break.
Yeah, well, that was a wonderful episode.
Inaugural podcast.
The Daniel Shipley. Actually, we have a clip from about 5 years ago of us at a fire, and we said, you know, we should do a podcast, and you were like, I'll play it in the episode, maybe at the very end.
Oh, damn, we got a clip.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'll have to find it. And, you know, you were like, you know, if this is the Chasing Your Dreams podcast, like, you got to upload this. Like, yeah, we're not in a studio, but we're around like a Canadian fire, and like, you got to upload it. Otherwise you're a phony. And I'm like, that's so true. And like, that's good motivation. Like,
if you love doing it, you'll just do it. Like, dude, like I said about music, whether I play in a famous band or my music never hears the light of day, I'm going to write because I love doing it. And you like talking to people and hearing what they have to say and learning from them. You know, you've done the Mo Mondays. Like, this is like your passion. Like, you've already been doing this with Mo Mondays.
yeah.
You know, like, you're going to do some form of it probably, even if, you know, the zombie apocalypse hits and we're sitting around by a fire
And there's zombies outside. Like,
yeah, you're going to be like,
locked doors.
so when did you first become a zombie? Like, have you eaten someone's skin? And you're going to interview them because you have that interest, right?
Yeah, I think you're also like really good at having conversation, and like that's like something I value in our friendship. It's like I said earlier, it's like that's a good quality, like being able to like listen to what I say and like play around with it and decide how you want to respond and continue the conversation. And like it takes practice to get good at talking to people. And like, you know, one of the first things I learned, it was like a How to Talk to Girls podcast I listened to. And he was like, you know, and you can use this universally. It's like when somebody says something, you know, grab a couple things from what they just said. They're like, oh yeah, like I went to Whistler, like I really like snowboarding. And it's like, okay, what was in that sentence that you can use to respond to? It's like, there was like Whistler And snowboarding, this person likes snowboarding, this person likes traveling, have they ever been? And then like you can respond like, oh,
Yeah.
tell me more. Or you can say, oh, like I like snowboarding too, like what do you like? And so I was just saying, like, you're good at having conversations, so it's easy to develop a flow. And
Right.
like a little part of me was like a little bit nervous about doing this, but I'm like, I mean, you're like,
It's a different format, right?
yeah, it's only but you're also like a good friend of mine. So I'm like, this is going to be pretty easy.
Yeah.
You're like, we don't need to warm up, go do some jumping jacks. I'm
Yeah.
like, we do this all the time, like taking
Yeah.
stuff to the dump, and you're like having a good conversation. Like,
Yeah, it probably helps because I play music and like I listen to podcasts and I don't have that self awareness where I'm like, oh crap, I'm on a camera or something, right?
yeah,
It's just blocking out, just having a conversation, right? And enjoying whatever we're talking about, so it's easy, right?
yeah, this has been great, and you gave some great answers. And why don't I leave you with one more question? Remember Daniel Shipley, gtrenos.com. He's a hardworking reno man. He's very versatile in life. Learned a lot of different things: plumbing, fixing toilets,
Oh, yeah.
electrician. Does it all in the Barrie area. And you gave me the answer, but I'll leave you with like, who inspires you in life? And you had said anyone doing things that I can learn from. And that's such a great answer. But is there anybody specific that inspires you, and like, or a specific story of something? Like, I know the donut guy inspired you, but no, we're not inspired, but
Yeah, people doing things like taking chances, like you doing this instead of just talking about it. People have said this to me before. Oh, I'm going to do a podcast. And it's like, okay.
oh, I've said
And
that
then
5 times.
it doesn't
10
happen,
times. And
right?
finally we did it.
But like you have it set up, you have lights, like that's inspiring. When people talk and then they don't do anything, it's disappointing. I feel like it takes a bit of energy out of me when people just talk and I'm like, why are you're wasting my time telling me what you're going to do, but you're not going to do it. So when people actually do shit, it's like, that's inspiring. Like my sister's going to school for physio. She's getting it done. That's inspiring, right? I work with some people who invest in real estate. They get up in the morning, they're like, oh, I want to get in on this property. And they find a way to invest or find investors. They're making stuff happen,
Making stuff happen.
Making stuff happen. Yeah. Bands releasing new albums.
Yeah.
Like we both like Blink-182. Like just hearing they're still putting out music.
Yeah.
And it's still awesome. And it's like they're making it happen. They're not like, we did it, we're rich or something. Like they still have a passion for it.
Yeah.
That's inspiring, Just getting it in.
Yeah. While you're here.
That David Goggins guy that I was watching, the guy's he's just running hundreds of miles all the time, like every day. He's just making shit happen, inspiring people.
Yeah. If you can like get in a awareness of waking up each day and like, yeah, it's not always doing go, 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 but like getting stuff done and, being present in the day, knowing like this is a new day, and like, yeah, maybe you have to work 8 hours a day, but like, and you may not always be able to be completely present filling the gas, but like during that day, just having an awareness that like this could be your last day, or like, just this is a new day and I'm here right now. And like
not letting that stuff take you to the boredom of work or filling your gas, filling the tank, but saying I'm going to make it to do yoga tonight or jujutsu, or I'm going to play guitar because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm tired. Force myself to dust off the guitar, and then 3 hours later I'm like, I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Every time I've done yoga, I'm glad I did it. I didn't always want to do it, but I'm glad I did it.
I say that every time I go on my paddleboard. I'm like, I've never had a bad time on my paddleboard.
Yeah.
Like every time I go out there, and like even in -20 playing hockey the other day, like, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch on that, but like just side note, like I didn't realize, once your feet get cold playing hockey outside, you're kind of done. Like your toes are like, there gets a point where you're like, okay, I got to shut down. Like,
Yeah.
But I learned like from Buddy who loves to do the cold dips in the winter, you know, he was like,
Dude, you got to get that guy on the podcast.
he's on coming the next
nice,
episode. Yeah.
nice.
He's like, I became so aware of how important it is like moving my toes, like while I get in the water, because that's like the first thing, like your extremities that go,
Right.
your fingers and toes. So when we were playing hockey, like I stopped for like 5 minutes and just shook my foot, my
Yeah.
skate like this. And then as the blood comes back in, it kind of like burned a little bit.
Yeah.
But then it went away. I was like, wow, my foot's like warm now. I was like, it's -20 out. Like, this is amazing. I was about to shut it down. Like, and I had to do that every like half hour, but like,
How has no one invented like heated boots?
for hockey players. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, if you're inside,
I
it's
won't
not
put that
bad.
on the podcast.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
have to-
Edit that out.
Yeah.
Just a little battery or something. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about great podcast? What about just last thing? And then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I want maybe like one thing from your mom that inspires you and one thing from your dad that inspires you.
One thing.
Because
from
I'm
my-
sure there's lots of things where you're like, your parents, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel that
Good
way
point.
too.
Good point.
But like, what is something about your mom that either inspires you or like you see yourself, like you have that feature that your mom has? Maybe it's not something that inspires you. It's something you're working on.
Well, she has a passion for swimming, and that's similar to me and my passion for a great many other things. You know, whatever.
She's
Jiu-jitsu,
got
hockey.
passions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just like seeing that in her. That inspires me. You know, like tell me about how she does 100 lengths in the pool, and it's good. It's important. You need to have things that you love to do, or otherwise, when you retire, it's like, what are you going to do with your life, right? Some people just work, and then when they stop, they don't have any hobbies, and it's scary, right?
There's legit books that say what to do when you retire. I'm like,
Yeah,
who wrote that book? Like, how's that book exist?
right.
But
Actually, someone that wrote it is not retired yet because they're writing a book. So what do they know, right?
yeah, good point.
So they came out of retirement to write the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess that's inspiring, seeing her doing something that she wants. So we got my dad a motorcycle for his birthday,
Wow.
and seeing him learn it, it's kind of scary, right? Because I'm like, shit, like what if he kills himself, right? Like we got him that bike.
Yeah. How old is your dad?
Was he 61 now?
Yeah. Good for him. Like learning to ride a motorcycle at 61.
Yeah, but I remember him talking about it even as a kid. Oh yeah, my buddy at work's got a bike, and like, oh, it'd be so cool. And I was thinking like, what are you saying? Like, why is it so cool? Why don't you get one then? And there's always an excuse. You got kids and this and that, and like if you work a job where there's a limited income, you can work harder, but you won't get more money, right? Like if you're an hourly job, that's why I like being a business owner, because if you work harder and smarter, you can reap the benefits of that. But like when I was at a wood shop before, if you make 20 bookcases a day, the next guy makes 10, you still get paid the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, seeing him learn something for the first time, like he taught me to ride a bike when I was a little 5-year-old or something. And then here we are when he was like 60
Going full circle.
and I'm like 34 and I'm teaching him to ride a bike. That tripped me out, dude. And seeing him like kind of be nervous with it, and seeing him because everyone makes mistakes shifting gears or whatever, right? And then seeing him try to work it out in his brain, it's like, dude, he did this with me fucking 30 years ago.
It's like you're looking at yourself as like a 5-year-old learning to ride a bike, like, cause it's your dad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that popped in your mind, but like, that's what I would feel like.
Yeah. You're learning something for like the first time.
Another version of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to be an adult and learn something new, like a motorcycle at 60, a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm too old for that. Make some bullshit excuse, and then just shrivel up and waste away until they die. But that's what you need to do as a human. You need to be 60 and learn how to ride a bike, or fucking do something. Learn to paint, or I don't know.
I think that's what inspires me in life, is the fact that there's so much interesting things to learn. And like, you know how many instruments there are? Like, I would love in a perfect world to play all of them. Like, you know how interesting that'd be? Like, obviously that's impossible, but like that possibility and just those doors that are open,
Yeah.
it excites me in life. That like, or being able to play an instrument with someone who plays the, you know, santur or whatever, like the
Yeah.
sitar.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you took the time to learn that. I took the time to learn this.
Right.
It's like, you know, and it goes back to even just having conversations. It's like, you know, you have finite time on this planet. Like, I'm never going to be a surgeon, but like I could meet a surgeon and hear his story about like what it's like to be a surgeon, and you live vicariously through that person. And like,
Yeah.
you kind of feel the same things like he feels when he's doing something that you'll never do, you know?
Yeah. Everyone's got a different path, and just hearing about it, it's like the closest we can really get to living it is just hearing their story, right? But man, it makes life interesting.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Yeah. Thanks for listening. The Your Favorite Life podcast. It sounds like Dan has definitely found his path on his favorite life. I think you work hard, and you're just playing in life, you know, experimenting, playing, and always not afraid to open new doors.
Yeah.
And
Don't be afraid to fail. Do something.
do something.
Have balance, enjoy. You got to work. You got to do stuff that you don't want to do, right? You got to go to work. You got to put the gas in your car. You got to fold the laundry. But try to have the balance and do stuff that you do enjoy, right? Otherwise,
Figure that out. What do
Yeah.
you enjoy? And then, you know, you got to try new things. That's as simple as that. Yeah.
amen to that.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Take care. And we're out.
All right, friends. Hopefully you learned something new. For more information on living your favorite life, head over to yourfavoritelife.com for connecting or booking a coaching appointment. If you'd like to leave me a review, I'd love to consider your feedback. And if you resonate with this energy, follow and subscribe, tell a friend. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And have a good life. Be kind, be curious, and be creative. Catch you on the flip side.
And the door was shutting, and I was like, you know what, fuck this. And I just like jumped out, and the door shut, and it was like, I just changed my whole life there. Like, and like, but, or did I? Like, was I, what?
The train crashed, right?
Yeah, and then like they made a movie about it, Final Destination. But like, you know, maybe I was, it's crazy. Like, we talked about that.
Can I interrupt you? Following your dreams with podcast, you have to upload it.
Okay.
In the podcast.
The inaugural
In the
podcast.
podcast, you'll hear me saying, if you want to follow your dreams, you have to do it. That's what I'm saying right now.
But will you hear him saying it? Because we need to test it.
That's
You know what you mean? It's a contradiction if he doesn't upload it.
Exactly. It's not the Follow Your Dreams podcast. You don't upload it.
All right, I like that.